Welcome back to training. If you haven't watched our first pistol fundamentals video titled Safety First, where I deep dive into the 4 weapon safety rules and how to properly clear out your pistol, please stop watching this video and go watch that one first, because it's crucial to ensure that you train safely. And that video is going to teach you how. However, if you have seen it, then let's quickly cover those ideas again before we start our training. First, let's go over the 4 weapon safety rules. The first weapon safety rule is treat every weapon as if it is loaded, even when you know it's not. The second weapon safety rule is never point your weapon at anything you are not willing to destroy. The third weapon safety rule is keep your finger straight and off the trigger until you're up on target and ready to fire. And the fourth rule is know your target and what lies beyond. Now let's clear out our pistol to ensure we aren't training with a loaded gun. First, attempt to put your weapon on safe. My pistol doesn't have a manual safety, but if yours does, go ahead and do that. Then remove the magazine, lock your slide to the rear, and conduct a 3-point check of your chamber, magazine well, and slide face, and ensure that all 3 areas are clear of any bullets, and then send your slide home. And we now know that we're working with a completely cleared out pistol and we can safely dry fire. If for any reason you're unable to ensure that your pistol is not completely clear, do not continue training with this video. This video has 4 segments. We're first going to learn a proper shooting stance. Then we're going to learn how to grip a pistol properly to ensure you always have maximum control. After that, we're going to learn how to aim correctly using proper sight alignment. And then lastly, we're going to learn proper trigger control, or how to pull your trigger without moving your gun at all. The first part of a proper shooting foundation is learning a proper stance. And a lot of people overcomplicate this, but it's very, very simple. Just think of a good fighting stance, right? You're going to have, go ahead and pan down. You're going to have your front foot forward and it's going to be facing your target. You're going to have your rear leg back slightly out. Go ahead and pan back up. And then you're just going to bend your knees and then lean slightly forward. Okay, you're not going to lean too far forward. Just think about like if you were going to box somebody, right? Like that's what you want. And then you just punch out and that's your stance. Okay, a lot of people try to overcomplicate this. It's very, very simple. If someone were to push you, you just want to be able to push back a little bit, right? You'd want to feel steady. So this is your stance, and it also allows you to move in any direction. Some people will shoot like this. It makes it very hard to turn in this direction. All right, so this opens you up to any movement, which is very important for defensive shooting situations, because I might have to move this way and I might have to move this way. I might have to move forward. I might have to move back. And a good defensive kind of active athletic stance will give you the ability to do all of those things. All right, now that we have a good stance, let's go ahead, pick up our pistols, and focus on getting a good grip. And this is a 2-step process because we have 2 hands, so we're going to focus on getting our firing hand grip first, which is the hand that pulls the trigger, and then we're going to get our support hand on afterwards. And in order to have a good firing hand grip, you need to remember 4 things. High firm grip, high middle finger on the trigger guard, finger straighten off the trigger, and thumb out of the way. The reason you want to make sure that you have a high firm grip is because any space in here will allow this gun, once you fire it, to rock all over the place. And usually if you have space here, it means your grip is too low, obviously. And so you're also going to have space here. And so it's going to rock up more than it should, and then it's going to come down more than it should. So high firm grip, no space. You should not be able to stick your finger in this space right here. And then no space between your middle finger and the trigger guard. And that way when it comes up, it can't really go anywhere. And then when it comes down, it can't really go anywhere either. Okay, you want to eliminate as much space as possible when you're gripping your pistol. And then finger straighten off the trigger because we're following the 3rd weapon safety rule. Thumb out of the way. And the reason we want to get our thumb out of the way is because when it comes to gripping your pistol, maximum contact is the name of the game. You want to get as much of your hands on the pistol as possible. And so what you're looking for is this big meaty portion of your hand right here connecting with this part of the pistol here. And you can't do that if your thumb is in the way, right? So this tiny little thumb is getting in the way of your huge palm making contact with the pistol. So get your thumb out of the way, and there's 2 ways you can kind of think about getting good contact between your palm and the pistol. You can either tilt your hand forward and you can kind of just see it fall into place, or you can just come up from the bottom and then fold it in. There's 2 things you need to remember about your support hand: maximum contact and then index finger high on the trigger guard. So maximum contact between the palm of your hand and this part of the pistol, and then your index finger high on the trigger guard. Just like you don't want any space here, you don't want any space here. And then once you get those 2 things, bring everything high and forward. Beginners have a tendency to bring everything down and back. You want to bring everything high and forward. And you can kind of judge if your grip is correct every time by where your thumb ends up on your pistol. My own pistol has serrations right here, so kind of just look and see, once you get a good grip, where is your thumb? And mine comes to just about like 3 serrations in. And so make sure that once you grip your pistol, you can look, okay, I'm at my 3rd serration, my grip is good to go, and you know you're set. The last thing that you need to remember is you need to vise down with your support hand as hard as you can without shaking, and then your firing hand should feel like you're coming down on a hammer. Usually beginners do the exact opposite, and the reason why is because their thumb is down, so they can't really get a good grip with their support hand, but they vise grip down with their firing hand, and then their support hand is super loose, and it should be the exact opposite. Your firing hand should feel like you're coming down on a hammer, right? Or a hammer coming down on a nail. You're not like vice gripping that hammer, right? If you're hammering a nail, you're not like, right? You just have good enough control so it doesn't fly out of your hand. That's what your firing hand grip should feel like. And then your support hand grip should be as strong as you can without shaking. And that is how you grip a pistol. Okay, now that we have a proper grip, we're going to practice sight alignment. And that is just a fancy word for aiming our pistol correctly and making sure our sights are aligned. And so this is not what you're looking for, right? Notice how this one is high, the front sight tip is high. This one is low. This one is to the left, and this one is to the right. Do you see how none of them are aligned? Everything's kind of a little bit off. All right, now see the difference between this one. This is what you're looking for. Notice how the front sight tip is exactly in the middle and center of the rear sights, and it's perfectly aligned, right? It's not low or high, it's perfectly aligned straight across and right in the center. That's what you're looking for when it comes to sight alignment. And there's one quick thing that we have to do before we start practicing sight alignment, and that's make sure that you know which eye is your dominant eye. Usually if you're a righty, then your right eye is your dominant eye, but sometimes this cannot be the case, and this can throw a lot of people off. So it's really, really easy to determine what eye is your dominant eye if you haven't done this before. You basically just take your hands like this, and then just put an object 15, 20 feet away in that little hole in your hands, and then bring it back to your eyes, and it will just naturally go to your dominant eye. If you try to do the other eye, you'll lose that object. I lose it right there. Okay, so it's very easy to tell which eye is your dominant eye, and that's what you aim with. So I'm a righty, and so it's very easy for me. I just aim with like my right eye. I look forward, but like my right eye is directly behind my pistol. If I was a righty and my left eye was my dominant eye, this is rare, but it can be the case, then all I would do is just turn my head the other way, and I would aim with my left eye directly behind the pistol. So it's just slightly different. So whichever eye is your dominant eye, make sure that is directly lined up with your sights. Okay, now that we know how to aim and which eye is our dominant eye, let's just go ahead and practice that for a quick minute. And if you have a red dot, you just put your red dot directly on your target. So it's super easy. However, there's one thing to think about when you're doing this, and it could be, a lot of beginners will aim with one eye closed, and this is fine if that's the way you have to do it as a beginner. But 2 tips to learn how to shoot with both eyes open is 1, either close your eyes and then slowly open it over time, or 2, just squint your eyes a little bit, and that will focus your vision on your front sight tip. And if this is really hard for you as a beginner, it's totally fine, just close one eye. Not a big deal. But if you want to learn how to shoot with both eyes open, then you can practice either slowly opening one eye or squinting your eyes, and that'll help you kind of focus on that front sight tip. And the last point when it comes to aiming is when you pick up your pistol, don't pick it up and then come up in a pendulum motion. You want to pick it up and bring it straight to your chest and then punch out. And the reason why is because right here, I'm already lethal, right? If I needed to engage a threat or a target, I could instantly turn and then boom, right? I could shoot from right here. But if I bring it up, I'm not lethal until I come all the way up, right? So whenever you pick up your pistol, it comes straight to your chest and then you punch out. And the other thing too is once you start punching out, you can try to start to catch your sights as you come out. And so it's easier to get that sight picture more quickly. But if you come up, you don't have any sights in your vision until you're all the way up here. So it's good for defensive shooting purposes, but it also helps you acquire your sights faster if when you pick up your pistol, you come straight to your chest and then out. And that is how you aim your pistol. All right, now that we know how to aim our pistol, the last thing we need to be able to do is pull the trigger, and this is called trigger control. And what it means is being able to pull the trigger without moving your pistol at all or disrupting your sights, because it doesn't matter if you can aim really well and you have proper grip. The big problem that a lot of beginners have is they will aim with their pistol, and then right before the shot breaks, they get all nervous and they jerk the trigger. So it doesn't matter if you have good grip and you can aim really well and you have a proper stance. If you don't have proper trigger control, then everything kind of falls apart. So the way that we make sure we have good trigger control is we have to get comfortable and understand how our trigger works. So every pistol is different, and a little heads up, depending on what type of pistol you have, you may have to insert your magazine, and you're obviously going to have to take your safety off in order to do this process. But I have my Glock right here, and with this gun, I can just dry fire, no problem. But if I try to do the same thing with my M&P Shield right here, you'll notice, right, I can't pull the trigger. It's not working, but then once I insert the magazine, then I can pull the trigger. So depending on what type of pistol you own, you may have to insert the magazine. Just make sure that you're inserting an empty magazine and one that's not loaded. And if you have a manual safety, I told you at the beginning of the video to put your manual safety on to engage your safety. You're obviously going to have to disengage the safety in order to practice your trigger pull. All right, so in order to have good trigger control, we first need to understand how a trigger works. And there's 4 stages to every trigger. First, you have slack, where it's easy to pull. And depending on the type of pistol you have, you might have very little slack, but you'll have some nonetheless. So you have slack, and then it's called hitting the wall, where it becomes difficult. Then you have the break, where the shot breaks. And then you have the reset, listen for the click, right there, where the firing pin resets so that you can fire again. Now, the next thing you need to do is figure out where you're going to place your index finger, your trigger finger, on the trigger. And this can be a really hot topic of discussion in the gun community, and lots of people have opinions. You know, there's an old adage about everybody having their own opinion, but you basically just want it around this crease, and as long as it's comfortable, consistent, and repeatable for you, then it's fine. Don't let anybody else tell you otherwise. So let's get up on target. And what you're looking for is pulling the trigger without moving your sights at all. That's the name of the game when it comes to trigger control. And a couple tips in order to do that is, 1, you want to isolate your trigger finger. Beginners have a tendency to grip harder as they pull the trigger because they're trying to manage that recoil. They're afraid of the shot that's about to take place. And so they get fearful, and then they start trying to compensate by gripping the pistol harder. And that will disrupt your sights. It'll throw off your shot. And so that's what trigger control is. It's not just pulling the trigger. It's making everything stay completely still as your trigger finger moves. And so that's the reason that we want to have a hammer grip feel on our firing hand, and then we vice grip down with our support hand. Because when beginners jerk the trigger like this, it's not from your support hand ripping down. It's from your firing hand over gripping and you jerking the trigger. So you want to loosen up your firing hand and really try to isolate that trigger finger. And so the only thing that moves is that trigger finger. So once you get up on target, vice grip down with your support hand, loosen up your firing hand a little bit, and then try to have the only thing move be that trigger finger. And the last tip that I have for you is, once you start pulling the trigger, don't stop. Okay, beginners have a big tendency to get themselves into trouble because they go through the slack, easily. They're not worried, but then once they get to the wall, they know that shot's about to break, and that's when they stop and they get in their head, and then they start shaking and they jerk the trigger. Once you start pulling the trigger, game over. It's done. Just pull the trigger straight to the end. You want a smooth, steady trigger pull, so it can be slow, but it's still slow, smooth, and steady. So if this is the metaphorical distance of your trigger pull, it's smooth and steady the whole way. You can speed it up, and then it's that same pace the whole way. You don't go slow and then jerk at the end, and you don't go fast and then slow down and then jerk. Okay, it's just one smooth, steady trigger pull. And if you're able to do that, isolate that trigger finger, nice, smooth, steady trigger pull, then that will allow you to have good trigger control and get your shots on target every single time. All right, well, that concludes our Pistol Fundamentals course. I hope you enjoyed it. Now it's time to get into the real training so you can learn how to defend yourself and your family. So head on over to our home defense course, and I'll see you there. Until then, stay safe, live free, and I'll see you soon.